Welcome everybody to this collaboration event between LiveTiles and Swinburne University. So LiveTiles has been collaborating with Swinburne for many years and they're a strategic partner of ours. And something that I learned this week is that one of our co-founders is actually a Swinny alumni, but we might touch on that in a moment. If I click over now, I'll tell you a little bit about LiveTiles. There we go, about us. So we're a global company specializing in employee collaboration and communication software. And we are in a number of locations around the world. So now flicking over to, look at all these fancy slides today. This is amazing. These are our speakers today, and I'll tell you a bit more about them in a minute. So what are we up to today? Well, look, as the title suggested, we're going to have a discussion about the modern distributed workforce. You know, things have changed a lot with COVID, and we're all trying to do our best to keep things moving, which has been a challenge for some. And for others, it's seen us, reimagine the way that we do things, and some have even thrived. So this is really about us sharing our stories with you, our stories of survival, thriving, making tough decisions, innovating, and most importantly, looking after our people. So I'm really looking forward to this session because I've got some great guests here to join with me. So why don't I introduce them? I'll stop sharing my screen. So first up, we have got Nicola Howard, Business Readiness Manager from Swinburne. Give us a wave, Nicola. There she is. And we've got Fiona Knowles, Head of Major Projects. Hi, Fiona. There she is, fantastic. And from LiveTiles, we have our co-founder and Swinburne alumni, Peter Newen-Brown. G'day, Pete. And our Senior Vice President of People and Experience, Vanessa Ferguson. Welcome aboard, everybody. How's it going? All right, let's kick this thing off. So let's talk about the theme of survive versus thrive. COVID-19 has pretty much hit the world for a 6, and businesses are looking for ways to thrive in this new world. But for many, it's actually all about surviving. Now, Pete, can I throw this over to you? We're a tech company, and many people just assume that it was so simple for us to get through these times because as we're going through them, everybody's needing more and more tech, and it must be so easy for a tech company to adopt, but it wasn't quite so easy, was it, mate?
Yeah, I think there was some maybe assumption that we would be able to handle it differently than others. But to be honest, we're a human business like any other business out there, and we've got the same challenges. So yeah, it's been, as we've all discussed 1,000 times over the last 3 months, it's been difficult. And hopefully, through the next hour, we'll actually speak about some of the things to look forward to in what we've all been through and experienced together. I think there's been a lot of resilience built. And I think as leaders, and again, we'll cover this shortly, I think we have a huge opportunity to turn the future of the workplace and the world into something that we've got more control of than what we may have thought of beforehand. So I think with us, from a technology standpoint, Chris, technology is not the answer to the world's problems. It's always been seen as an enabler. It's why we've always used technology. I think for us in particular, it wasn't so much about adoption of new technology or continuing to use the technology we always have. It was probably just learning to work in ways where the human interconnectedness was different. That's all. And I think these are things we've all been discussing quite a lot in the last few months. And I think through I speak to a lot of founders of other really large tech businesses in Australia in particular. We're all going through the same challenges at different levels of impacts for different reasons, and we all do have our own special circumstances. But I can guarantee, and I've just come off a call this morning with a bunch of those founders, very, very similar sort of challenges than others have. Also, though, we've got an opportunity to use tech, our own tech to support other businesses too. So looking forward to the next little part of the discussion.
Yeah. And will add there that Pete is actually in Victoria, so in stage 4 lockdowns now, and it's doing something with his memory because it's about 5 months so far, Pete, not only 3. So it's been a long time. Swinburne ladies, what about yourselves? How have you found it?
Yeah, I guess there's that same assumption. I guess when you've got a university with with technology in the title, that there's an assumption that you're all over it and everything's covered. But I think what we probably found from a people perspective on a similar vein is we probably had too many options. And it was that taking that time to work through that and work out, well, what's going to be best and what's the purpose? So rather than just having technology as a tool for the sake of it, like you were saying, so what's going to work best for teaching, students, professional staff, support staff? So I guess trying to work through all of those, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should explain that you and Fiona are kind of from different sides of the business, aren't you? Academic and professional?
Yeah, a lot of the work that I do is supporting professional staff. So I guess I can talk to a little bit about the academic from what's happened to support that cohort of staff.
Sure. And Fiona, you're part of the business that you work in?
Major projects. So I sit within the PAVE area of the university.
Sure, sure. Let's talk about some of the challenges now. So, Swinburne, what were some of the challenges that you faced? I mean, COVID hit, and then all of a sudden, we are just all working from various forms of lockdown like that.
Yes. From my perspective, I suppose I was fortunate. I have a large cohort of staff that are working from home. Traditionally, they work a lot from home.
Yep.
So, but saying that, it was still an adjustment to overcome. I suppose the communication was our biggest issue within our team.
Sure.
We work quite closely together, and it's quite handy walking out of an office and knowing that there's someone there that you can ask questions of or get updates, and you can't do that in the current climate without actually picking up the phone or ringing someone through Teams. So that was probably our biggest challenge.
And Nicola, how quick we talk about this thing of the new normal. How quickly did you feel like you found your new normal?
I guess it's changed in the different stages of lockdown, to be honest. I think what I saw is people were very passive when we had team meetings or larger webinars with multiple staff, and they didn't want to interact at all. A lot of people had their videos off, and they found it quite challenging.
Yep.
And then now we've just had a few this week, and it's been very interactive. They're using things like collaboration tools like Miro with post-it notes and breakout rooms. And I remember in the very first lockdown, we used breakout rooms and then saw the numbers of people attending just drop. And I guess it's a similar thing when you say, let's just go around the room. It's that sinking feeling that people get when you say, we're just going into breakout rooms. So it's like reading the room is a little different virtually than when you're physically there.
I can understand how it was difficult for some people to get used to this whole video thing early on. I had a lot of meetings where people were doing the same, and then people started to take pride in their backgrounds. Like if you look at Pete here today, he's picked out his perfect records to show in the background there. So it sort of maybe come full circle, perhaps.
I think so. And of course, the new things you can download, pictures. My team's meeting's a cafe in Melbourne, which seems to be really popular at the moment.
Nice. Hey Pete, we're a sales-based tech business, and not being able to meet face-to-face has been a really, really challenging thing, because sales is all about building trusted relationships, and it's difficult to build one when you've got this digital divide between us, where we're just looking at video on the screen.
Yeah, it's true, and it's again the same challenge that very similar companies to us are facing day to day. I think also in a company like ours, which has been, I guess, a hyper growth technology business, the fastest growing technology company in Australia, we have done that off the back of a very, very strong culture and human centered culture. And there's been a lot of activities that we would do on a weekly basis that we literally can't do and haven't been able to do for some time now. I think also there's different cultures that are actually handling this differently. We've got operations in all across the east coast of Australia here, through to various major countries in Europe and also the US. And so we've probably learned, probably in an accelerated way, just the way different people think about how to deal with the crisis like we've been through, how to come out of one, how to sell software or sell what you do I guess, during a pandemic or even post a pandemic. And so I think one thing we've learned as well is to not necessarily enforce your view of things that might exist here in Melbourne and Australia onto, say, a team in Copenhagen and Denmark or in Ireland. It's just different. So I think there's been an accelerated learning of cultures, and I think the world has genuinely got smaller in a good way through this process, where we're definitely closer and connected more digitally than ever before. I think there's lots of benefits coming out of that. I also think there's some negatives, which I think as leaders and as I guess people in this industry, we have an ability to change a future the better, and probably not through the overuse of technology when we get through these times as well. So yeah, it's been a really interesting time, and really hard to predict before this thing even started how it would unfold. I do think there has been a lot more good than bad come out of this pandemic, despite the obvious, challenges for people's health with COVID. But outside of that, I think honestly, we can change the world for a better, if we want to. I think that's up to us.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard. You can't treat everybody with, the one size fits all approach. And just one thing that springs to mind is the whole idea of introverts and extroverts. Ness, I'm just wondering, as head of people experience, have you got a list of people in our company who's an introvert and who's an extrovert, and therefore how we should be looking after them?
No, I wish I had that list. That would make my job a little bit easier. But no, everyone does respond differently to these types of situations. And so some people don't really mind being locked down, for example, having to work from home. I think most of those people don't have small children, but a lot of people are finding it not so bad, whereas others are really, really struggling with it, and it tends to be the extroverts who really want to get together face to face. So
absolutely.
It has been absolutely challenging, but we need to make sure that how we're tackling it is balanced for both. So not having too many social things, because sometimes you can just be adding to the load for the introverts.
Yeah, I know myself. I'm an extrovert, and I've got an older brother who's an introvert. We could not be more different. And I rang him one day on the phone, just sort of saying, "Oh, I'm so sick of being locked away." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, I'm loving it. Nobody's bothering me. I don't have to do anything when they say. I just got my nice quiet time." I'm like, "Well, I've taught myself to play the ukulele. I bought myself a set of electric drums. I'm trying to do anything I can to try and, not go mad here." We've got Nicola here, who describes herself as an introverted extrovert. Can you explain that to us and how you've handled this sort of situation?
Yeah, so I've realised over the years I've only got a certain amount of energy for face to face, and
Yep.
so in my role as a business partner and change manager, I have to do a lot of face to face work, and so I know that those serendipity moments in the cafe or the corridor conversations, that's where I get all of my new business and things to work on. And so a lot of the time, that's where I use my energy during the day. And I've noticed in this virtual world, I'm finding it really difficult because there's only a certain amount of video chat that I can do. And, really having to concentrate and bring the energy that you want to feel in a room to that call. And so I guess that's where I'm struggling a little bit. That's where I find myself, for example, being invited to speak at these events, and I find that challenging, yet it also gives me energy. So it's quite difficult.
Okay. Yeah, well, you're doing very well, I think. It sounds like you might be suffering from a little bit of video meeting fatigue. Is anybody else suffering from that at the moment? Yes?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about tough decisions. And Pete, can I throw it back to you? One of the key themes during COVID times is the need to make some tough decisions. And we're seeing this, right now with our state premiers needing to do things for the greater good. It's not always popular, but it must be done. Pete, you discovered this company or co-founded this company with your best friend, and you've built it up very quickly over the last 5 or 6 years. And then all of a sudden, COVID comes along, and potentially some decisions that you might have had to make in 1, 2, 3 years, all of a sudden you're doing it. How difficult was that for you, for someone who cares so much about the people that work with you?
Yeah, look, I guess maybe the backstory there. I mean, Carl and I have been in business partnership for 17 years, and in the preceding 16, first 16, yeah, sure, we've had to make some tough decisions, and it's there's always those, but the scale of those decisions paled compared to what we had to do in April. And unfortunately, in April, for a company that's in a hypergrowth phase. And probably also a cash burning business, we actually were left with no choice other than to reduce costs. And we actually did it in 2 phases, and I'll just quickly explain them because I think they had slightly different feelings about them. The first one that we did was we tried to do a reduction of hours to try and preserve some cash there, and that was out. And we wanted to do that before making any decisions on people's full-time employment, because we wanted to protect the family, is the way we describe it. And that was potentially or arguably harder to implement in terms of just people's morale and feelings than the restructure which we ultimately had to do 4 weeks later when we knew we had no choice other than to reduce headcount in the business. And it was an extremely difficult time for everyone in the business, literally from the senior executives who have had their teams reduced, from obviously the people and the teams, different teams were impacted more than others. But by that stage, by the time we'd done the restructure, I think people had some sense that there was worse to come. I think this is one of the reasons why people have been so, let's say, mental health has been an issue, because people's view of their careers is quite uncertain. It's not specific to tech, it's actually just broad. People are uncertain about career progress. I think that's why we're coming up to a nice curve out of the pandemic now, where people, I think, are worrying less about that. So in terms of how we handle, it was really, really hard to do. What I will say, and I think this is what I'd encourage others to do if they can, speak to your peers in other organisations, whether they're connected, they're disconnected, independent, family, friends. You'll get a better sense of whether decisions you're making make sense if you just talk it out with other people, particularly when they're out of your business. So I mentioned before that we're really connected with a lot of the other founders who had to do similar things, and having that sort of support to understand, hey, there is actually a way of executing these decisions that is not inhumane. There's a way of doing it where you can support people who have had to exit the business. And where have been impacted, the university sector and higher education have been impacted majorly as well. And I feel that through these times, I've never seen greater acts of human kindness in these periods. I think that they can often be done or be seen to be done in a very impersonal way, and almost just it's done and dusted, it's out of the way. I think this has been treated really differently. So I'm really optimistic about, as I said, the sort of acts of kindness that I've seen through these times, both before people were made aware of the news to actually post departing the business as well. So yeah, not easy, mate, but it's not easy for everyone. So we're not special in that regard.
Yeah. And Swinburne, you've been through something similar just recently with some downsizing, some voluntary redundancies. Not an easy thing to do, but it feels like we're all not alone in this at the moment, are we?
Yeah, I think when you find out who's leaving, and then trying to wrap your head around that when you're being told about our global purpose, and just try and come back to the why. And so trying to move forward, create great student experience, but create great staff experience, but with that happening in parallel, and knowing the hundreds of years of experience of staff that are leaving. So it's just, I think, just trying to move people through that. But I think what you were talking about there with the kindness and the gratitude, at the same time trying to pull out examples of that and really highlight, having strange things like we've got a Swinburne staff pet wall of fame where people, post a picture of their pet and a little bit of a quirky information about it, and just, a gratitude wall where we add a blog, which actually is one staff member thanking another staff member or a team. And it's those little things, I think, that they're done from one staff member to another. It's not something that happens through people and culture. It's just, it's an organic thing, and I think they're more authentic at these times.
And Ness, for you as head of people and experience, could not have been a maybe more stressful time in your career, perhaps?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, and for me personally as well, I was actually based in New York prior to COVID, and have lived and worked in New York for the past 8 years, and so this saw me move my family back to Australia, which was a big personal change happening at the same time of a lot of change within the business. And I'm not unique in that either. There were a lot of people who are having changes happen within the family, whether it's a partner and their work environment, or businesses on the side, those sorts of things. A lot of upheaval for people personally and professionally. So it's it's been tough in my role as people and experience for the business, making sure that we stay on top of wellness and that connectivity. But one thing that I'd say, Nicola, you certainly mentioned that it's not necessarily a people and culture organized thing to do nice things for each other. It's what your culture is, that people are doing that sort of stuff already. And I think that in the aftermath of a lot of the changes that we implemented in April, we saw our culture actually emerge, and that was let's get on with it. Let's, you know, band together and find the positive in this, rather than, you know, continue to just feel like, well, the end of the world, and feeling sorry for ourselves.
Fiona, did it feel like the end of the world for you, or you've bounced back with your team now?
I think we've got to the bounce back. It was very hard while we were going through the process for motivating the staff. So trying to keep spirits up and ensuring that they are valued and they are required was quite difficult during that process.
Absolutely. Look, in this role that I have here at LiveTiles, I speak to a lot of different people in lots of different businesses with these sorts of interview situations, and it seems like you know, COVID presented them in a way to draw a line in the sand, and that maybe some of the things they were thinking about down the track in the future they're doing just sort of brought it all through right now. And that might have been difficult things like having to do a restructure or let people go. But when some of them sort of sat down and took a look at it, they realized that maybe they weren't operating their business in the most efficient manner, or there are other ideas. And this whole idea of innovation in times of crisis sort of bubbled up. And I've heard so many different stories of how people have sort of taken these negatives and turned them into a positive. I'm just wondering, like Swinburne, did you find any of that sort of thing happening at your company?
Well, I guess, I don't know, Fiona, with the one thing that sort of stands out to me is Swintopia, which was virtualising the open day and the gamification of open day, and
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so leading the sector. So, you know, students having that on-campus virtual experience, but you know, with avatars and creating the, you know, a game experience. And I think the feedback from the industry has been, you know, like, wow, why didn't we think of that? And I guess that's where our new Vice Chancellor is coming from when she's saying we're going to be leading, you know, from a digital perspective. You know, this is what, you know, she wants us to be known for. But that took, you know, zero budget, multiple units from across the university working together in collaboration. And some of these things would take, you know, years usually with the red tape of a university. But, you know, people coming together and just saying, right, we've got to get this done. This is the date. And I think they're the types of activities that brought us through that, you know, that you could point to say, look at this that's happening, how this is great. We're being innovative, and it's creating that culture that Vanessa was talking about before.
And did I read earlier this week that you created a bit of a cross-unit collaboration seminar series that went virtual as well?
Yeah, so we've been, you know, it was a face-to-face session that, you know, staff across the university could attend on a Friday morning, and then we sort of got into lockdown and people were saying to me how much they missed being able to come along. And so I thought, well, we could probably do it virtually and we'll see how we go. And it's actually been really popular. And if there isn't one on a week, I get a message saying, what's the theme this week? It's like, oh, we actually haven't got a presenter this week. And so, you know, going through that, we had contribution leave as well, Peter, where people could volunteer to drop their hours, and they were taking Fridays off, which was when the session was. But I could see people were tuning in to the session even though they were on their leave day. So it's that sense of community and that connectiveness that we've all been looking for, but also understanding what's happening across the university. What are the major projects? What are the initiatives that if you're in your silo, especially if you're at home, what's happening in the wider world outside of your own team? I think it was really important to create that series, and it's, you know, who knows what will happen next year, but it's opened up a whole new world to people that are on a different campus that normally couldn't come face to face. They feel equal with everybody else now.
Yeah, absolutely. Ness, for us here at LiveTiles, it was actually a chance for us to innovate, and we're actually launching a new product very shortly that was born during COVID times. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very excited about it. It's LiveTiles Vibe. So when we all shifted to working from home, a bunch of us, Pete, myself, and some others, we were really worried about how we were going to check in with people and track employee wellness over a period of time. We didn't know how long for at that point. And so what I was doing in the background was looking at different technologies that exist, mostly around surveys and engagement surveys and things like that, to see what could we leverage to gather this sort of real-time feedback from our employees. And interestingly, there was nothing out there that actually suited our particular use case. We just wanted something very short and sweet, a quick once a day vibe, literally a vibe like this is how I'm feeling. So being a tech company, we decided to go and build it. And so it's been, as you mentioned earlier, about 5 months that we've all been pretty much locked down. We've been able to develop this tech in that short amount of time, and we're using it internally as we speak, which is very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Fiona, I just want to bring up a point that you made in an email to me this week about utilising the innovation of your under 22s to help find a way through this. I took that to mean that the younger generation who live their lives, on their phones and in video chat could maybe teach some of the older generation, such as Pete and myself, about how to make the best of this situation. Is that kind of how it went down?
Yes, it did. So initially we tried the regular meetings, trying to all get together. My team has, 80 plus staff, so trying to do check-ins on 80 plus staff is quite challenging when you're doing everyday roles. Then we tried to set up sessions, and you'll be pleased to know there was a session on how to use a ukulele or how to play a ukulele, bingo, and we did a session on how to different sign languages. But it started to drop off. There was a really big uptake in the first month, and then people got probably overwhelmed, and then we had the extra pressure of homeschooling. For a lot of my staff have children, and homeschooling caused a few traumatic experiences amongst some of the staff. So I put to my younger staff members, they could come up with a concept that would be engaging and bring us all together. And just the parameters around it was to be fun, and keep in mind that there is a wide breadth of age groups within my area. So they put together a business plan, and it starts this week. I think we have a trivia week this week during one of the lunch hours, and they put prizes up. But they are so much more social media savvy than some of us are. So they've looked at engaging all of us. And I think it's a great opportunity for them, because they were given a project, they've worked on it together. There's probably 8 of them that are doing it together. Like I said, they wrote a full business plan for me. It was great to watch. And so so we're now having they've facilitated so that we'll have regular different activities. I don't know what they all are. All I know is that I've been booked out. I have to attend them all, and I'm hoping that really motivates the staff and gets them quite excited and connected again.
I hope that they remember who they're dealing with when they do put out maybe the music quiz, and that it's not all about Cardi B and Chance the Rapper, that maybe they think of us in our 40s that like to have a few 80s music questions perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And we used to, funnily enough, actually do that on site when we're at work. We used to do a what's the latest on your phone, what's the latest music, and when you've got staff going, oh, who are the Beatles, and other staff freaking out and other staff going, how could you not know who the Beatles are? It showed the difference in age group quite dramatically. So yes, I'm hoping they do. Well, I'm 100% certain they've taken into account our broad
very good
age
very
range.
good, because we've got to look after each other during these tough times. And Ness, health and wellbeing has certainly been a really important element of our COVID strategy, to focus on that for our employees. What have you seen as some of the common themes that we've been dealing with staff during this time?
Great question, and I think we've touched on it already slightly. One of the toughest things for us internally at LiveTiles has been the physical separation. So the physical isolation and having to connect via screens all the time. I'd even go one further to say that recently the inconsistency in that experience has been a challenge for us. And what I mean by that is that for now, a lot of us in Melbourne are locked down, and really have been for the past 2 months in some sort of lockdown, whereas we're seeing our European colleagues back to sort of business as usual in the office. Even you guys in Hobart, all back at the office.
I went to Bunnings this weekend.
Yeah, don't rub it in. But so that's been challenging, and so it's the inconsistency, and I don't want to harp on about it because I'm in Melbourne in this lockdown, but it has felt like in the previous one, the first lockdown that we had, the whole world was in it together, and it was exciting because we were all at home and we were having Zoom parties and we were doing our bit for the world. And now fast forward to the July-August time period, I think Victorians are just done, feeling very fatigued by the rules, the physical separation, that kind of thing. So what we've had to manage is also the balance between having that accessibility of get together time with also let's not. I think a lot of us, particularly in Melbourne, have been like, yeah, it's nice to have the option there to join a cocktail hour or, get on another Teams meeting just for a social catch up, that kind of thing. But also I'd really like the option not to. So, so being sure to make those things available, but absolutely optional. We've also implemented some things around fitness to help with mental health and wellbeing as well, physical wellbeing. So we have live fit sessions via Zoom a couple of times a week as well, which has been really good. And we've got some exciting things that we're doing throughout the spring to get people sort of feeling a little bit more positive as we come into the warmer weather as well.
Yeah. Pete, have you seen a real shift in the discussions around the C-suite meetings to really be focusing more and more on health and wellbeing during these times?
Yeah, we have, and again, I've noticed it also just with the discussions with other founders. We started a movement a couple of years ago called Live Smiles, which was designed to try and make wellbeing a more intrinsic part of the workplace. I think again, COVID has helped accelerate that and help people understand the importance of it. So there's definitely been more discussion. I still don't think it's fully understood, particularly for a lot of traditional companies, about their roles and responsibilities. I think there's a really good intention there to improve it. So I think there's going to be some really good positive things to come out of this. I think you're also going to see over the next few years, new roles created very, very specifically in people and culture teams around health and wellbeing. At the moment, we're sort of all seeking outside advice, which is great. And I do see a lot of really, really cool stuff that people are doing. But I think you're going to see roles be created through these times that deal with this. I think the one thing that I've just noticed, and I've been aware of this over the last couple of years while we've been building the Live Smiles movement, is there's many factors that sort of affect people's well-being, and probably some of the ones that I was aware of pre-pandemic, but probably wasn't in the top 5 or 6 of C-level discussions, was certainly loneliness and isolation. It was actually raised to me by a doctor who said, Pete, if you could only see the impact of loneliness on some of our patients and outpatients, he said, and he basically said, you've got to really focus on that element of wellbeing. Obviously, lockdowns and that sort of stuff is probably forced isolation on people who aren't used to it. And I think that monotony of the same thing day in, day out, it's clearly not a good thing. So again, going back to solution mode here, if we can come up with ways to make each week a little bit more interesting for our people, for ourselves, for our partners, our children, we've got to innovate daily almost to just have a bit of fun and do things a little bit differently and give people something to look forward to. I think one thing that's been really, really hard to do, particularly between April and June, is set dates for things to happen later in a calendar year that you can commit to. It's been very, very hard. And we're all used to saying, we're going to go on a holiday in September to so-and-so. I mean, a lot of people's holidays have been cancelled. A lot of people's weddings have been cancelled. So I think that's the important thing. Yes, you're one of them, right? So we can find ways.
I think Vanessa has too.
We've all been through it. We've all been through it. But people need something to look forward to. And so you mentioned before about being positive. I just want to quickly comment on that. Positive psychology, if we look at that for one moment, it's very, very easy, and I guess as humans, we're more inclined, about 3 or 4 times more inclined to focus on the negative than the positive. So it's really hard sometimes to shift the needle towards thinking positive, but hopefully a conversation like this will get people starting to think about the future and positive stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for that, mate. Look, I had an old mate. He used to say that every day is a school day, and I think certainly during these times we're all learning a lot about ourselves, our families, our businesses, the world. just wondering, maybe Swinburne team, if I throw it over to you for a moment, just to maybe give us a few words of wisdom, anything you might have learned about yourselves or your business over the last few months. You don't have to hurry in.
Yeah, no, I was thinking Fiona wanted to jump in first there.
She's
No,
looking
you
like
go
she wants to
first.
say something. Okay.
Nicola, do you want to go?
Oh, okay. I think just resilience. You know, we went through just in February, we decided we're going to change. Our team was changing into an agile way of working, and we put all of our monitoring and tasks on, into a virtual world. And we'd been used to working individually and using a whiteboard in the office. And so going through that, new ways of working virtually in teams, then going through voluntary redundancy, being repointed to a different team. So what I've learned is that, hang on to those positives and, making sure that if people are, don't leave anyone behind, like really paying attention and observing what's happening. Because it's a bit like social media, you only see a certain percentage of someone online. And so really tuning in your other skills to make sure asking the right questions. And I think that's what I've learned over the last 5 months.
Sure. Fiona?
I'm actually finding that I'm a little bit better connected, believe it or not. I'm so used to traditionally having scheduled, suppose, meetings where I travel to another campus or, trying to fit someone in or trying to get hold of someone on short notice is near impossible. But now that we're doing it virtually, I've probably met more people across the university in the last 5 months than I have for the last 4 years. So it's quite interesting. That because it's instantaneous. You can actually really get hold of someone quite quickly. You know when they're busy, you know when they're not. So I find that very interesting. And then I think about all the times that I've gone to meetings and had to travel an hour and an hour back. And so I think that it's changed probably my thought process and others within the university, that we could do things a lot smarter.
I'd just say that one of us on this call here today isn't any easier to get hold of during these times. I'm looking fairly and squarely at you, Peter. Ness, Peter, any key takeaways for either of you two?
Yeah, so I would say there's been a lot of learnings over the past 5 months. The one that I need to remind myself of every day, and our employees of every day, is the importance of switching off. Now that every day, if we are working from home, it can blend into the same. It's really important to have that time where you literally put your phone in another room, shut your laptop, and have scheduled days too where you do the same if you can, because in my previous pre-COVID life, I didn't mind being on all the time, because I could be going out for dinner and do a quick check of emails while I'm waiting to get the subway or that kind of thing, or in an Uber. Now you're literally in the one place, and it all blends into that one. So you need to be very deliberate in switching off.
Agree.
Yeah, well, firstly, Chris, I just want to say I'm selective on who I ignore during busy times, so apologies on that one. No, actually, I think everyone's comments are right, and it's probably more practical advice than I think what's generically sort of shared on media and stuff. But I think the one thing I'd suggest, and my business partner challenged me on this about 6 weeks ago, and he said, Pete, have a think about how you spent your time in the last 12 months, just almost like as a set of percentages, X% on meetings, X% on family, X% on, he said, you work out your own categories, but have a think about how you spent your time. And he said, now ask yourself, is that how you need to spend the next 12 months? Where do you need to spend more time? Where do you need to spend less time? And I think this situation has challenged us to think like this, firstly, because we're at reduced capacity, like we're literally dealing with a smaller number of people trying to do twice as much as what we did before. We have to learn to stop some things, to pause some other things, and focus on one or two things. And I think that's hard to do unless you stop and take check and challenge yourself on that. And I'm not normally good at doing this, but it was a really good exercise for me to go through with my business partner. And I'd suggest, if you want to do it with your team and get everyone to do it individually, because I think if you're going to maybe stop doing certain things, you may require some of your team members to actually step up and do more of other things. So just I think that all relates to resilience and all the things that we mentioned before as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, Chris, I'm going to finish this in a funny way as well. You always ask the questions. How about you answer your own question for once? What have you learned over the last 4 or 5 months?
I've actually learned that my children are actually quite amazing. Everybody's been complaining about homeschooling. I've not had a problem whatsoever. I've got a 16-year-old son. The biggest issue I've had with him is he's just a sloth and he doesn't clean up his room or anything like that. But he did all of his schoolwork. And my daughter, who's 12, just is running her own thing. She's been on Teams and she's been doing everything she needs to do. They've just been absolutely amazing. And I think I've actually grown to appreciate my wife even more so than I have in the past, because we've spent some great times just sitting down and chatting, you know, when there's not been anything on television or you know, things like that, nothing to do. We just spent this time together and chatting. And I've also I've had the opportunity to renovate a house in this last 5 months. I've been very thankful that LiveTiles let me have that one day off a week to renovate a house, and I'm absolutely exhausted, but I've got 2 more weeks to go. I'm back at work 5 days this week, and I've learned that when you put your mind to something, even you are not a tradesman, you can do lots of stuff. And it's just sometimes when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and that's certainly what we've tried to do at the moment, because we've had this great opportunity to spend time together and, you know, work on something for our future as a family. So that's my lemonade, I suppose. So
Good answer.
So can I throw it back to all of you now? The future. I mean, it's a little bit of an uncertain thing at the moment, what it might look like. Nicola, Fiona, what's exciting you about the future at Swinburne?
I guess I'm excited because we've always worked with a continuous improvement mindset in our team, and now everyone's on board. And so,
Yeah, sure.
you know, everyone's open to look for different ways of working, efficiencies, adding value to our students and staff. And it's just not going to be as hard to get traction with those conversations. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Fiona?
I think that we have been able to adapt really flexibly, and that can continue into our future, whether we're on campus or not, and show that we do value the staff. I mean, I've got staff, as I said, you're having a great time homeschooling. Some of my staff are not, but we've been flexible enough to say, do you need a chunk in the middle of the day and work of an evening? Or so I think that knowing that the work will still happen, which I think sometimes some organisations didn't believe, that if someone worked from home, that the work doesn't get done. We know that's not true. It's getting done, and it's probably getting done more efficiently than it has ever before. So I think going forward, being able to, one, trust your staff, know that they're doing their job, and to offer that flexibility is I'm looking forward to that. I think that will be a great outcome.
It's been that you've moved back from New York and you're going to spend your first summer Christmas in a while. Is that what you're looking forward to, maybe?
I really am. If we can, get out of this lockdown, that would be really nice. I actually am feeling very positive about the future, to be honest. I think that, you know, we've as a business, we've come together, we've identified what's important to us. And as I mentioned, our culture has shone through and really shown what it is throughout this experience, not, you know, as a result of the experience, if that makes sense. And so I'm excited to give back to our employees and continue to support them through this time. It is still uncertain, I guess. We don't know what's coming, particularly given we've got employees in other regions of the world as well. So I can sit here and say, oh, I'm pretty optimistic about Australia and having a semi-normal summer, we hope. But we don't know what that looks like in the US, and we hope that things stay, you know, okay in Europe, but we just don't know. So continuing to support everyone and provide that flexibility as we go. Yeah,
and I'll leave it with you, Pete, for the final word. I enjoy your views on the world and life, and especially the Life Smiles movement. So I'm really interested to see what you're excited about for the future.
Well, clearly, you know, joining more meetings with you the next 6 months is a very, very important part of. No, I'm joking. I must admit, we have an opportunity do things sooner than we planned in this business. One of those, if I go back to 2018, we had this amazing opportunity to bring the whole company together in Hawaii, 130 people from all around the world, and we basically got everyone involved in the process to basically establish our purpose, mission, and values in our business, and it connects with me very strongly, and Vanessa, who was intrinsically involved with that as well. But there's a lot of people who weren't involved in that process, who've joined the company since then, joined us either by acquisition or they've just been a new starter in the last couple of years. I'm really looking forward to redoing that process and bringing people who haven't experienced that with LiveTiles to get that version 2 experience of feeling really, passionately connected to the business. It's what Carl and I, it's all we know is trying to build businesses that mean something to the people who work there. And so we've got, through the help of Vanessa and our people and culture team, an accelerated path now to bring everyone back together again. And we were going to do it, but probably in reality, 9 to 12 months away. And there is nothing more exciting from a founder's point of view in building your employee engagement and making people feel like they are part of something bigger and better than what they may currently think. So that's an exciting part of the future for us. And obviously, if we have an ability as a company to influence the workplace for the better in the next 12 months, which we think we're doing now, but we think we can do more, working with the likes of Swinburne on a different number of partnerships, a bunch of technology partners that we're going to work with. We want to change the world, make it a better place. We don't want it just to be the same as it was beforehand. I don't believe the world should go back to the way it was before COVID. I think we can do better than that as a society and a community. So if we can all be a bit positive, support each other, because it's not easy for everyone at the moment, then I think really it's up to us. And I feel good that we can control that story for the time being.
See, everybody, he never disappoints to provide us with some wise words. Thanks for that, Pete. Look, thank you to all the panelists today, Nicola, Fiona, Pete, Vanessa. Thank you for joining me. It's been really interesting hearing your points of view on how we all sort of managed our way through the first part of this of COVID. So it's been fantastic. To those listening live, thanks for joining us, and those watching this on demand or online via YouTube, hopefully you got something out of it as well, and we'll catch you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.